Parents drained the education fund I'd built myself since I was 13 to cover my sister's glow-up surgeries after her second divorce at 25. So I said, fine, do whatever, and revealed all their shady behavior to my grandparents. Now, they're furious because sis can't pretend to be the victim anymore. And this is apparently how they've decided to burn through her share of the $300,000 inheritance. Pouring your heart and soul into something since you were 13, saving every single penny, only for your parents to demand it all, to fund your twice-divorced sister's plastic surgery? What the hell happened next? Well, let me tell you, it was an explosion that changed my family forever. Look, my family is complicated. Actually, complicated is too kind. They're borderline problematic. I'm 18, and as the only son, I've always been told I'm the man of the house, saddled with responsibilities, while my older sister, Grace, 25, got all the love and attention. She's the golden child, pampered, spoiled, and completely oblivious. I can't stand her, and the feeling is mutual. Honestly, I don't blame anyone who can't stand her, because no one, other than my parents, has ever managed to be friends with her for more than 6 months. Boyfriends? Same story. She's just insufferable. And the worst part? She truly believes she can do no wrong, that everyone else is the problem, and she has every right to cut them off. The real world doesn't work like that, honey. All this entitlement comes directly from our parents. They enable her every whim, every delusion. Sometimes my younger sister, Kelsey, she's 14, and I honestly wonder if they only wanted one child, and we were just decorations. But I thank God for Kelsey. I love her more than anyone, and I am determined to get her out of this toxic environment. My parents are trying to mold Kelsey into another Grace, and I will not let that happen. It's a relief that Kelsey is nothing like Grace. She's kind, grounded, and has no desire to be a queen. It's up to me to protect her from the messed up, outdated beliefs our family holds. Growing up, the message hammered into me was, be a man. Take over dad's business. Be serious. Earn money. Provide. I didn't know any different, so I embraced it. But the push to earn money started ridiculously early. My dad told me he wouldn't hand me anything on a silver platter. If I wanted financial aid for college, if I wanted any help from him, I had to prove my worth as a man. I remember this lecture, clear as day, right before my 11th birthday. I just asked if friends could come over for a party. He looked at me and said, "You're transforming into a young man now. It's time to understand responsibilities, give up this childishness." I wish I'd told him to shove it, but I was just a kid. I didn't know better. So at 13, I got a job. Wasn't glamorous, walking and dog-sitting for neighbors, but I loved animals and I was good at it. It brought in money, most of which I saved. My parents were proud, and that made me proud. They never asked how much I made, just ensured I wasn't doing anything dangerous like drugs or alcohol. They'd check my room, but they never found anything. I was stashing my money, saving every cent for college. I was naive then, thinking my small savings would be enough, and desperately hoping that if I showed Dad I was responsible, he'd step up. Grace, on the other hand, lived a completely different life. Her only requirements? Look pretty and marry well. That's it. She never had to lift a finger, never had to do well in school, never developed any hobbies beyond makeup and clothes. I remember one time, when I was under 10, she was running a fever, not dressed up. My parents were horrified. A normal Grace was apparently worse than a sick Grace. They forced her to go to a party, demanding she look presentable. I guess she had her own struggles, but it only made her more insufferable. They've tried to do the same to Kelsey, but I've been a brick wall, try to shield her from their manipulation. And honestly, with Grace's constant drama, they're usually too occupied with her to bother Kelsey much. The real blow-up happened a few weeks ago. I got into one of the best universities in my state on a full scholarship. I was ecstatic, truly proud of myself. My parents were proud too, for a moment. Dad even said he was proud of my hard work. Hearing those words from him, they meant the world. But then he completely blindsided me. He said, "Since you have a scholarship, you can work and pay for your living costs." My jaw dropped. I've been working since I was 13 because I thought if I proved myself, he'd help when the time came. I'd hoped my late teens, my college years, would be a break from constant work. He just shrugged and said he was training me for the trials of life. Trials? I could have had a comfortable life. I was seething, but I decided to talk to him calmly. I told him everything. How I'd worked my entire childhood because of his promise, how I'd saved meticulously, how I needed a break, a life. I asked him to help with living costs, explaining my savings wouldn't cover everything. He looked defeated. He sighed and said he understood, but he couldn't do much right now because Grace was going through a lot. That's when I snapped. Grace is always going through a lot. I yelled. You've always preferred her. You paid for her clothes, her makeup, both her weddings, only for her to get dumped because she's an idiotic ass with no personality beyond a stupid Barbie doll. Dad looked exasperated. He insisted he had to help her. She was in a bad place. Her bad place being 2 divorces by 25. Her first husband, Luke, dumped her within a year. Her second, Andrew, a guy everyone, even my parents, secretly hated because he was just icky despite his money, was a serial cheater who eventually got another woman pregnant and left Grace for good. She'd been back home for a year, making everyone's lives miserable. And now, my parents, realizing their project Grace had failed, were setting their sights on Kelsey. Dad said his focus had to be on Grace. And that's when the rage that had been simmering for years boiled over. He told me that since I had a full ride, I was sorted, and he wanted me to give all my savings to him so he could use it for Grace. For what, you ask? For cosmetic surgeries. Because she believed her husband's left her because she wasn't pretty enough. I have never heard anything so utterly insane in my life. I saw red. I honestly don't know how I didn't slap him right then and there. I started screaming, just spewing everything that had been bottled up for years. I told him he had ruined my entire childhood with his stupid notions, and that he had failed both Grace and me. I called Grace an unemployable piece of crap because they never let her develop a personality or skills beyond being beautiful and getting a husband. I told him they were just pandering to her every whim out of guilt, and there was no way in hell I was giving a single penny for her glow-ups. He actually remained calm, saying I needed to do the right thing and stand by my family. I laughed in his face. Do the right thing? When have you ever done the right thing by me? I shouted. I've only ever seen favoritism and partiality. You're a fool if you think I'm giving Grace a dime. I stormed out, completely broken. Logically, I knew I could still work through college, but logic didn't matter. The realization that no matter what I achieved, I would never be worthy enough for my parents finally hit home. They had one daughter who did nothing, failed at their one requirement, and never wanted for anything. And then there was me, constantly working, studying, always on the lookout for more, desperate to prove I was a good kid, hoping it would earn their love. It never did. Grace was their favorite, and nothing would change that. I knew I had to act for both myself and Kelsey. I needed to expose them. The only people who could talk sense into my dad were my grandparents. They were the ones he actually listened to. I called Grandpa and laid everything out. The years of working, the scholarship, Dad's refusal to help, and the absolutely ridiculous plan for Grace's surgeries. He listened patiently, then told me to calm down and said he wanted to meet in person. The next day, I drove to his house, an hour away. I repeated everything. He just sat there, listening, not interrupting. When I finished, he just asked, "What do you want?" I told him I didn't even want Dad's money anymore. I was just sick of the bias, the neglect. I want the world to know what really happened behind these closed doors, I said. He simply told me not to worry, that he would take care of everything. That was last week. Dad kept pressuring me. Then Mom joined in with the emotional blackmail. But I refused to budge. I trusted Grandpa. I just couldn't wait for his justice. And oh boy, did it come. The blow-up happened, and it was glorious, or rather, much better than I could have ever imagined. My grandparents called a family meeting. Dad thought it was just one of our regular luncheons. He was so wrong. Grandpa started by asking Dad what he was planning for Grace. Mom mumbled something about college, but Dad confidently said Grace was looking into courses. Everyone in that room, except Dad, knew that was a lie. Grandpa, though, wasn't playing games. He looked straight at Grace and asked, "What courses, Grace? What colleges are you looking at?" She just stared blankly, a deer in headlights. The embarrassment was palpable. Dad's face turned beet red. Then Grandpa turned to me. "What are your college plans?" I told him about the full scholarship, but also that Dad had refused to help with living costs. Grandpa shot Dad a look that could curdle milk. Dad pretended not to see it. Then Grandma stepped in. "How much are you giving him?" she asked Dad, not if, but how much. Dad stammered that they hadn't discussed it. "Actually," I interjected, looking directly at him, "we did." He flat out refused to help. Grace kicked me under the table, but I didn't care. It was all coming out. Dad laughed nervously, trying to pass it off as silly banter. My mom was glaring at me, like she wanted me erased from existence. I retorted, "It didn't feel like banter to me." I was even asked to give up all my savings to fund Grace's cosmetic procedures. Slam! Grandpa slammed his hand on the table. He demanded to know if it was true. Dad, stunned, just said yes. The entire room went silent. Grandpa, a master of dramatics, slowly looked at every single person there. He asked Dad why he was behaving this way. Dad had no answer. He asked Mom how she could be okay with such partiality. She said nothing. Then Grandpa stood up. "Since the parents in this situation are choosing to stay quiet," he announced, his voice booming, "I have no choice but to take things into my own hands." He said he'd set aside a $300,000 inheritance for the 3 grandchildren. He'd planned to divide it equally, but since my parents were focusing all their energy and money on Grace, and none on Kelsey or me, he was forced to rethink this division. "Grace," he declared, "will be receiving $30,000. The remaining $270,000 will be divided equally between Kelsey and my name." My jaw hit the floor. $135,000 each. It was an insane amount of money. I never asked for this, never expected it. I was just stunned. Hell broke loose. Grace started screaming, railing about how unfair it was, how she only got peanuts while we got so much. Grandpa, calm as ever, just said, "Grace, all your life, you've been getting so much, and Kelsey and my name have been getting peanuts. You didn't protest then." Dad tried to chime in, arguing it wasn't fair, that Grandpa was discriminating. Grandma cut him off. "We're not discriminating," she said. "We're just being fair. It's you and your wife who started the discrimination. We're just trying to make things right for the 2 children you've treated like crap." She added that none of this would have happened if they'd been good parents. Dad, still desperate, said Grace shouldn't be punished for a crime she didn't commit. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "Actually," he said, and Grace actually sighed in relief next to me, "your father is right. Poor old Grace isn't entirely to blame. The real culprits are your mother and father." Then he delivered the final, devastating blow. "So," he continued, "the inheritance I'd set aside for your father will also go to Kelsey and my name." All the color drained from Dad's face. He hadn't thought this through. Grandpa, cool as a cucumber, said, "Watch me." It was a dead-ass Chad move, and I swear, that man has my eternal respect. He declared he had nothing more to say and would be leaving. But before he did, he warned Dad, "Do not hound either Kelsey or my name. They are not to blame. And if you try to manipulate or harass them, I can go a lot lower." Dad has been absolutely silent ever since. He's petrified. Mama tried to talk to me, but I've avoided her like the plague, just like I did my whole childhood. Suddenly, I'm the hot thing in the family, and everyone's sucking up to me, even Grace. I told her to piss off. I'm just so glad Grandpa finally held them accountable. They're finally going to face consequences. As for me, that's a lot of money. My college worries are gone. My after-college worries are gone. It's an incredible head start. Update asterisk, I've left for college. Leaving home was bittersweet. Kelsey clung to me, crying, and I cried too. I know it's going to be hard for her, and I know my parents will try to manipulate her. I've told her to tell me everything, and she promised she would. I just hope I can do enough to protect her. Grandpa said I can use part of the inheritance for living costs, and I'm so grateful. I told him I'd probably still get a job, because for me, it was never really about the money. It was about the lack of acceptance, the neglect, all that rage. That's what it was. He respected my decision, even said I was more of a man than his own son. But he also told me to enjoy my life, that responsibilities would always be there. We agreed I'd try working but if it ever got too much, I wouldn't hesitate to use my inheritance. I thanked him, and we both got a little teary. I don't think I'll be touching that inheritance for a while. I don't even mind working. It just feels nice to have someone truly support me, to have that psychological safety net. I think I've missed this feeling my entire life, and it's incredibly overwhelming. So, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to stand up to your family like this? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below.